السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, welcome back. Give me 1 second. Okay, Alhamdulillah. So we don't have a lot of time. We're started the class 6:45. Break fast for those of you on Eastern Standard Time is about 7:50. So roughly we have about 50 something minutes, inshallah. So we don't have a lot of time to waste, and we want to kind of just jump right in, starting with the Surah Yusuf. And so, Surah to Yusuf is Surah number 12 in the Quran. So if you have your Quran with you, your English translation of the Quran with you, that would be a good idea to have, your English translation of the Quran with you here. Also, something to write with, a pen, paper, something to write your notes with. Do not write inside the Quran and do not write inside the Mus'haf. But inshallah, we're going to begin combing through the Surah of Yusuf alayhi salam. So, let's begin بإذن ta'ala. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins the surah Alif Lam Ra. Alright, and of course we don't need to stop here. Because these are from the miracles, from the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the miracles of the Quran that none knows the meaning of or why it's there except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we move on to ayat number 2, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna anzalnahu Qur'anan Arabiyan la'allakum ta'qilun. Inna anzalna عليك إنا أنزلناه قرآنا عربيا لعلكم تعقلون. That indeed we have revealed this Quran. Indeed we have revealed this Quran عربيا, as an Arabic Quran. We have revealed this Quran as an Arabic Quran لعلكم تعقلون, so that perhaps you may have understanding. Perhaps you may have understanding. Obviously, when you think about who were the immediate recipients of the Quran, who were the recipients of the Quran? They were the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'een, their native language, their native tongue was Arabic. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran in their language. Alright? Speak to the people, as the Prophet ﷺ said, خَاطِبَ النَّاسِ بِمَا يَفْحَمُونَ. Or as Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said, خَاطِبَ النَّاسِ بِمَا يَفْحَمُونَ. Speak to people in a language that they can understand. Speak to people in a language that they can understand. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this as an Arabic Quran. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, so that perhaps you may have understanding. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had revealed this Quran in another language to people whose native tongue was Arabic, it would have been asinine. It would have been useless. So what does that say for us who are non-native Arabic speakers? We do not speak Arabic. That is not our native tongue. That means it becomes an obligation for us to learn the Arabic language if we want to have an in-depth understanding of the Quran. If you want a basic understanding of the Quran, then go for it. Continue learning and reading the Quran in English. If you want a basic understanding of the Quran, then continue reading it and understanding it in English. If you want an in-depth understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's book and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what He means, and the jewels that are embedded, buried in these chapters, in these verses, then it would behoove you to learn the language of the Quran. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala said, اللغة العربية من الدين وفهمها واجب لأن فهم القرآن واجب وما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, Al-Lughat al-Arabiyyah min ad-Din, the language of Arabic is a part of our religion. It is not something that we should just shun or we should stay away from because we are not Arabs. So what? You're not an Arab. Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, who has the most authentic book after the Quran, the most authentic book after the Quran is Sahih al-Bukhari. And Imam al-Bukhari, Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari, was not an Arab. Imam Muslim ibn Hajjaj, the second most authentic book after Sahih al-Bukhari, was not an Arab. Abu Dawood al-Sijistani was not an Arab. These men were not Arabs. They learned the Arabic language just like I did and just like many others who are non-native Arabic speakers. They acquired the Arabic language through due diligence, through patience. I am living proof. Someone who was not a Muslim 25 years ago, I was not a Muslim. I was a non-Muslim. I am living proof that you can learn, acquire the Arabic language, not having any previous experience. I'm living proof of that. 25 years ago, I was not even a Muslim. And then I converted to Islam, and I was afforded the opportunity to go overseas and study Islam and to learn the Arabic language, and I acquired the Arabic language. I am living proof that you can do it. The first Sahih al-Bukhari that was ever given to me was given to me by a brother, a good brother. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this brother. Gave me the whole set of Sahih al-Bukhari in Arabic. I looked at the brother and I said, why would you give me the book in Arabic? He said, because one day you may learn Arabic and you will be able to read Sahih al-Bukhari. I still have that Sahih al-Bukhari to this day. He gave that book to me in 1999. I acquired the Arabic language. I never thought in a million years that I would be able to acquire the Arabic language to the degree where I would be able to open Sahih al-Bukhari and understand it. Ali Davis, he mentioned to, you guys before on the lecture, he gave, a speech, and he said, he remembered when he first got to al-Qura, when he first came to Mecca to study, and we went to the Haram for Taraweeh. By this time, I was already on my way out the door. I was already on my way out graduating. And Ali Davis, one time we went to the Haram. I was in Mecca to visit some brothers in Mecca. And we went to the Haram. It was during Ramadan. And we went to the Haram to pray Taraweeh. And as we were praying Taraweeh, of course, I as a student who had been there, a seasoned student who had been there for a while, Arabic was now my second language. I understood it like I understood English. And as we're in the Haram and we're listening to many of the reciters recite, he said to me after the prayer was over, he said, listen, how much of the Quran do you understand? He said, it's as if you understand everything. I said, I understand 100% everything he's reciting. I understand all of it. He said, how long will it take me for me to get to that point? I said, you are still a new student. Give it time. I said, you'll pace yourself. At first, you'll begin to recognize little words and phrases here and there. And then, 30, 40, 50%, 60% of what you hear in Arabic, you will understand. And by the time that you are in your fourth year in the university, you will understand everything. And he reminded me of that conversation when he came home, he graduated. He was like, remember we was in the Haram and I asked you, how long will it take for me to understand the Arabic language? I said, yeah. He was like, yo, it works. He said, at the beginning, I didn't understand anything. And then as the years went by and I acquired more and more of the Arabic language, I began to understand more. It can be done. Many other students of knowledge, many have acquired the Arabic language with due diligence. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-Fattah, the opener, opening that door for you. It can be done. Some of you have been Muslim 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. and have made very few attempts to actually acquire the Arabic language. We're not learning Arabic so that we can speak to Arabs, so you can use little phrases in your conversation like na'am and la. No, that's not why we're learning Arabic. We're learning Arabic so that we can understand this book right here. We're learning Arabic so we can understand this book right here. We're not learning Arabic so we can have conversations with Arabs, so we can show off our Arabic. That's not why we're learning Arabic. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Inna anzalnahu Qur'anan Arabiyyan la'allakum ta'qilun." That indeed we have revealed this Qur'an in Arabic so that perhaps you may have understanding. The book was revealed. Who were the immediate recipients of the Qur'an? The Sahaba, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, and they were Arab. The book, they were the immediate recipients of the book. So it had to be in their language, in their vernacular. Not just in their language, but as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that we have never sent a prophet illa bilisani qawmihi liyubayyina lahum. That we never sent a prophet except in the tongue of his people. And the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the tongue of his people and not in the language of his people, because tongue has a broader meaning. To send in the tongue of his people, meaning in the language of the people, as well as understanding the culture of the people. In order to understand the Quran, it's not just about understanding Arabic, but understanding cultural context. You have to understand the cultural context. If you don't, it's going to go right over your head. I don't care how much Arabic you know. We know tons of brothers and sisters who can regurgitate phrases in Arabic, but don't have a clue what in the world they're talking about. We know tons of them. Okay, so we move on. This ayat not really loaded like that. I want to stop on the verses that are loaded. So we move on. Ayat number 3. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصَ بِمَا أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ وَإِن كُنْتَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ لَمِنَ الْغَافِلِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ. We have revealed to you, O Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ, the most beautiful stories. We have revealed to you, O Muhammad, the most beautiful stories. بِمَا أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ, that is found in this Qur'an. We have revealed to you, O Muhammad, some of the most beautiful stories. We do relate unto you the most beautiful stories, which is in this Qur'an. And before this, you were completely heedless of it, meaning you had no knowledge of these stories before Allah revealed them to you. Meaning Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they did not know about the details that we are about to discuss that are in the story of Prophet Yusuf. With the details that we are about to discuss, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, prior to Allah revealing this story, he had no knowledge of it. He had no knowledge of it. So, in this ayat, there are some jewels embedded in this ayat. And this brings us to lesson number 1. We are going to extract as many jewels and lessons that we can from this surah. Here is your first lesson from this ayat. I'm going to give you your first lesson. The scholars, they explain. Let me give you the explanation first, and then I'll give you the lesson. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call the story of Yusuf the most beautiful story? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call the story of Yusuf the most beautiful story? Ahsan al-Qasas. The most beautiful story. What about this surah is so beautiful? The scholars say, as Imam al-Qurtubi, let me start with Imam al-Qurtubi first, rahimahullah ta'ala. He said, لِأَنَّ لَيْسَ فِي الْقُرْآنِ قِصَّةً تَتَضَمَّنَ من العبر والحكم ما تضمنته هذه القصة. Imam al-Qurtubi said the reason why Allah called this the most beautiful story is because there is no story in the Quran that comprises of the lessons and the wisdom that is contained in this story. There is no other story in the Quran that contains the lessons, the ibar wal hikam, the lessons and the wisdom that is contained in this surah, in this particular story. Some scholars say it's the most beautiful story لأن فيها ذكر التوحيد والفقه والسير والتعبير للرؤية والسياسة والمعاشرة والفوائد والنقط تصلح للدين والدنيا. Some of the scholars say the reason why this is the most beautiful story is because in this story is the mention of tawheed, the mention of fiqh, matters of jurisprudence, the issues of seer, issues of the biography, history. In this story, there is the interpretation of dreams. In this story, there is politics. In this story is learning how to live with people, day-to-day life, and fawaid and benefits and nuqat and points tuslih lid-din wa dunya, that is beneficial for your deen and for your dunya. Beneficial for your deen and your dunya. And you won't find that anywhere else in any other story. Some scholars say it's the most beautiful story because لأنها من عند الله جل وعلا كما بين الله سبحانه وتعالى وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين. Some of the scholars say it's the most beautiful story because it was revealed directly from God, directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not get this story from someone else. He got it directly on a good authority. As we say, I got it on good authority, and getting it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no greater authority than that. وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ قِيلًا, as Allah says, and who can be more truthful in speech than him? Who can be more truthful in speech than God himself? The Prophet ﷺ, this is the most beautiful story because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala got it directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The isnad, the chain of narration, connects all the way back to Allah. It came from Allah to Angel Jibreel to the Prophet ﷺ. You understand? That's the isnad. And as Abdullah bin Mubarak, rahimahullah ta'ala, one of the great scholars of hadith, he said, al-isnad min ad-din, that the isnad, the chain of narration, the chain of a narration is part of our religion, meaning where you got your information from is just as important as the information. You understand? We don't separate the two in our religion. Don't tell me that you got it from this person, you got it from that person. Now, wallahi, who you got the information from is just as important as the information itself. Al-isnad min ad-din, that the chain of narration is part of our religion. Who you got the information from is also important to us. وَلَوْلَا الْإِسْنَادِ لَقَالَ مَنْ شَاءَ مَا شَاءَ. That if it wasn't for the isnad, if it wasn't for the chain of narration, then anybody could say whatever they wanted to. And here we are today. We don't ever cross-reference. We don't ever check anything. Somebody could tell you something right now. Oh, brother Shadid did this or said that, and ala rats wal ayn, you'll accept it. You never go back and verify anything, even though it's part of our religion to verify. Even though, and the only time we seem to give a damn about verifying anything is when it's in our interests. When somebody is accusing us of something, then we want to say, well, where'd you hear that from? Where did you get that from? Now we want to make tathabbut. Now we want to affirm proof, evidence. But when it's convenient for you, it's like, oh, so-and-so told me. Right. MashaAllah. But as Abdullah bin Mubarak rahimahullah ta'ala said, al-isnad min ad-din, the chain of narration is part of our religion. فَلَوْلَا الْإِسْنَادِ لَقَالَ مَنْ شَاءَ مَا شَاءَ. That if it wasn't for the isnad, if it wasn't for the chain of narration, the connection back to the origin of where it came from, then anybody could say whatever they wanted to. Anybody could say whatever they wanted to. All of these coronavirus cases, they just now said that, oh, if you died and you have coronavirus, even though your cause of death was not coronavirus, we're going to just call it coronavirus. death by coronavirus. There is nothing that can be, there is no lack of integrity that is greater than that. Anybody who is working for a medical institution, you working for a hospital, you walking around with scrubs on, you really need to check the integrity of your job. You really need to check that. Because how could you work for an institution that makes money off of fear mongering and lying to people? You gotta be kidding me, man. You feel comfortable getting up, going to work every day for a medical institution, one of the biggest corporations, biggest money makers in our society today. And you put on your scrubs and you a medical healthcare worker. And I'm not condemning anybody for how you earn your money, but we should do it with integrity, man. Wallah al-Azim, I could never work for an organization or corporation and you blatantly lie to the people like that. You gotta be kidding me. Absolutely, it's a business. All business. No integrity. There's no integrity whatsoever. So you mean to tell me because someone may have contracted COVID-19, even though the cause of death may not actually have been COVID-19, you still gonna call it COVID-19, right? To inflate your numbers, to inflate the numbers, to make it look like it's, a pandemic. You gotta be kidding me, man. If it wasn't for the isnad, then anybody could say whatever they wanted to say. We never questioned where the origin of this information is coming from. We never question anything. This is the time that we live in. You guys, I'm from a different generation, so I function a little differently. So sometimes I say things and it's off-putting to some of you, but you got to understand the cultural context. I come from a different generation. I was raised differently. I see the world differently. I see the world differently than many of you. Many of you are okay with whatever society is telling you, whatever CNN is telling you, and you're okay. Ala Rasul Ayn, you will accept that. For me, that is absolutely unacceptable. I'm sorry. And we clash because you have people who grew up in my generation, grew up in the early 80s, born in the 70s, grew up in the early 80s, and they have a different mindset. They have a different experience with the world versus in contrast to someone who was born in the 90s, born in the 2000s. The type of experience that you're having with the world is completely different than the experience that I am having with the world. So these are some of the reasons why the scholars say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls this the most beautiful story. And if you notice something, pay attention to the story of Yusuf. Pay attention to the story of Yusuf. If you notice in this story, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never mentions this story again. You understand? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never reiterates the story of Yusuf again. As a matter of fact, Yusuf is only mentioned 2 times in the Quran. In this story, and he's mentioned once in Surah Al-An'am, Surah number 6 in the Quran. These are only 2 places that Prophet Yusuf's name is actually even mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never repeats this story again in the Quran. You understand? Unlike the other stories, the story of Musa, which is the most repeated, the most reiterated story throughout the whole Quran. You'll see the story of Musa in Surah Al-An'am, Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah this, Surah that. You'll see the story of Musa mentioned in so many different places throughout the Quran. Surah Al-Taha, Surah Maryam. You understand? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never reiterates, never mentions the story of Yusuf, never even mentions Yusuf again after this surah. You know why? Unlike the other stories that are mentioned multiple times, the story of Isa is mentioned many times, the story of Jesus mentioned many times, the story of Musa mentioned many times. The story, many stories. The story of Nuh alayhi salam mentioned many times. What do we learn from that? We learn from that, this is your lesson. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called this what? The most beautiful story. The reason why it's the most beautiful story, after all of what the scholars mention, is because beauty is defined by quality, not by quantity. Beauty is defined by quality, not quantity. Allah only says this story one time in the Quran. Unlike the other stories of the prophets and messengers, he reiterates them many times in different places in the Quran with different lessons in them. But this story, he only mentions one time because beauty is defined by quality, not by quantity. Allah didn't need to mention this story many times over. He only needed to mention it once. And the scholars say this is the beauty, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in that he put all of the lessons in Surah to Yusuf in Surah to Yusuf without having to go to other places in the Quran to find all of the other, jewels and tidbits. Allah gathered all of the fawaid, all jama'al fawaid kullaha. Allah gathered all of the benefits, all of the jewels, all of the lessons that is in the story of Yusuf in one place in the Quran. In one place. He did not reiterate the story of Yusuf more than once. It is only mentioned one place in the Quran. Assalamu alaikum. All right? That's what makes something beautiful. What makes something beautiful is that it only has to be mentioned once. Whereas the other things, they got to be mentioned many times over in different places. And you got to go to here, you got to go there, you got to go here, you got to go there to gather all of the benefits in that story. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was so merciful to us that everything that was connected to the story of Yusuf was gathered in the story of Yusuf, and Allah never repeated the surah again. Never repeated the story ever again. So the lesson that we get from this is that beauty is defined by quality, not by quantity. And that lesson can apply in so many areas of our lives. We tend to think, I got to have a huge squad. I got to have, all these friends. I got to have all the, my squad is thick. My squad is deep. And you think you got to have all of these people around you in order for you to feel valid. You only need one friend. Quality. One friend, one quality friend is equivalent to 50 friends that ain't got no quality in them, ain't got no loyalty in them. One friend with loyalty, integrity, honor, and sincere love and genuine respect is equivalent to 50 friends who don't have any of that. But we would opt for the 50 because we usually judge more. We usually judge better with more, right? That's our problem. We associate better with more. If I have more, that makes me better. It's not about having more. It's about the quality of what you do have. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only mentioned the story of Yusuf one time in the Quran. Whereas the other stories, he mentioned them many times over. So what makes something beautiful? As Allah called this, ahsan al-qasas, the most beautiful story. What makes this the most beautiful story is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only had to mention it once. Understand? Okay, so we move on to ayat number 4. Ayat number 4, everybody with me? Right? Everybody with me? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in continuing, he goes now jumping into the story. He said, we reveal to you, O Muhammad, ahsan al-qasas. Bima awhayna ilayka min hadha al-Quran, because of what we revealed to you from the Quran, when beforehand you were totally heedless of this. You knew nothing of this. إذ قال يوسف لأبيه يا أبتي إني رأيت أحد عشر كوكبا والشمس والقمر رأيتهم للساجدين قال يا بني لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا إن الشيطان للإنسان عدو مبين. 2 ayats, 4 and 5. There's some this is loaded. All right, so you guys we're not gonna go past these 2 for the rest of our lecture today. Loaded. I hope you guys are paying attention. Loaded. We have come across an ayat that is loaded. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, jumping into the story of Yusuf, he said, "Idh qala Yusuf," and remember when Yusuf said to his father. Who was Yusuf's father? Prophet Yaqub. Who was Yaqub? Israel. This is where you get Bani Israel. Israel is Yaqub, Prophet Yaqub, who was the son of Prophet Ishaq, who was the son of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. So Ibrahim alayhi salam had Ismail, and from the lineage of Ismail came Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then in Palestine, Sarah gave birth to Ishaq. Ishaq gave birth to Yaqub, and Yaqub gave birth to the tribe of Israel, Bani Israel. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and remember when Yusuf said to his father, listen to the conversation. The Quran is filled with dialogue. I have been telling you guys this for years. Pay attention to the dialogue in the Quran. So much wisdom embedded in a conversation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was so merciful to us that he captured in his final revelation conversations between righteous men and their children and their wives. Conversations. Pay attention to the conversations. Many of us, we like to watch TV. We like to watch, reality TV and the conversations that are between people. There is no conversation that is more powerful, more influential, more prolific than the conversations that are between the people, individuals that are mentioned in the Quran. None. There are no conversations that are more prolific than the conversations that are found in the Quran. Understand. So he says to his father, "If qala li abihi," and remember when Yusuf said to his father, listen to the conversation. He said, "Ya abati, O my beloved father." And I want you to imagine a young boy, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, who saw something in a dream. And he wakes up and he goes into his father's room and he says, Daddy, I saw in a dream something. This is a conversation between a boy and his father. And he used the word ebati. Ebati is like a term of endearment. It's not Abi, O father. Ebati means, O my beloved father. So they're speaking to one another because Yaqub extends the same when he talks to Yusuf. So you can see the exchange. The exchange is one of love. The exchange is one of compassion. The exchange is one of care and concern for both father to son and both son to father. Respect. So he says, Ya abati, daddy. Right? Because when children use daddy, that's a term of endearment. That's a term of endearment. If you are a father and you are afforded with children who refer to you as daddy, I dropped the ball because, I was on my Arabic thing, on my Salafi thing, when I first had, the bulk of my children, and I was on Call Me Abby. So now my children, forever call me Abby, right? I can never I told my children, I want you to call me daddy. My sons was like, what? We're not calling you daddy. That's not going to happen. So I dropped the ball on that. But my daughter and her twin, they refer to me as daddy. It is the most beautiful words, man. The most beautiful words that a father could hear, to have your daughter, to have your son refer to you as daddy. You understand? I dropped the ball with the first ones. They still refer to me as Abby. But for these two, just to hear those words come out of my daughter's mouth. Yes, daddy. You understand? It's so beautiful, man. It softens you. I literally will never tell her no if she's referring to me as such. You know what I mean? It's just something that just opens you up as a man, Many times we don't even get that type of love and compassion from our own wives. Well, no pun intended. But I mean, daughters, they have a special, they have a special relationship with their fathers. You know what I mean? And we're vulnerable, at the epitome of vulnerability that we are when we're with our daughters, man. But Yusuf, he says to his father, Ya abati, oh my beloved father, Inni ra'aytu ahada ashra kawkaban, oh my beloved father, I saw 11 stars. Pay attention to the dream. I'm going to come back to the dream, right? Martin Luther King had a dream, but Prophet Yusuf had a bigger dream. Prophet Yusuf had a dream. You understand? And his dream was revelation. His dream was revelation that eventually came into fruition. He said, Ya abati, oh my beloved father, I saw in a dream 11 stars, the sun and the moon. Ra'aytuhum li sajidin. I saw them prostrating to me, making sujood to me. Making sujood to me. And then listen what his father says to him. Qala ya bunay. He returns the favor. He said, oh my beloved son. He didn't say ya ibn, right? As many of us learn the Arabic language, but we don't understand the cultural context. So when you refer to your son, yeah, that's my ibn over there. That's my ibn. Ibn does not show compassion and love. It doesn't show care, concern. There's no emotion connected to that. Even the way that we say it, there's a lack of compassion, the way that it comes out of our mouths. Yeah, that's my ibn right there. There's no love in that. There's no compassion in that. And that's because we learn Arabic and we don't understand the cultural context. You want to show your child love, you refer to him as bunay. Yeah, bunay. Arabs, when they want to, especially Egyptians, I don't really hear Saudis. I lived in Saudi Arabia for many years. I never really heard Saudis refer to their children as bunay. But Egyptians, they use it a lot in their dialect. Egyptians will refer to their, Ya bunay, Ya bunay, ifham alayya, ya bunay. They refer to their child as bunay. Bunay means, oh, my beloved son, my beloved son. When you're trying to get the child's attention, you call him bunay because it has, it's loaded with, saturated with compassion and mercy, embedded in the word within itself. All right? He says, Ya bunay, oh my beloved son, la taqsus ru'yaka ala ikhwatika, fayakidu laka kayda. Do not relay your story to your brothers. Do not relay your story to your brothers. فَيَكِيدُ لَكَ كَيْدًا, because they're going to plot against you. إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لِلْإِنسَانِ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. That shaitan is ever an enemy to man. Pay attention. Now let's get into the lessons. Lesson number 2 for all of us as we are going through this story. This is your second lesson. The Arabs, they have a saying, لِكُلِّ مَقَامٍ مَقَالٍ. There is a time and place for every speech. There's a place that is appropriate for every speech. Everything that is known should not be said. That is your lesson. That's your second lesson. Everything that is known should not be said. You ever heard a phrase that my mother used to say? You have diarrhea of the mouth. Everything you hear, you narrate. And the Prophet ﷺ, he actually mentioned in the hadith that whoever narrates everything he hears, this is something that is inappropriate because you don't even know if it's true, if it's false. You just narrate. You hear it. It goes from your ear to your mouth. You don't care who you say it in front of. You don't care who is around. You don't care how that's going to come back to you. Nothing. You just let it come out of your mouth. And as the scholars say, أن الكلمة قبل أن تخرج تملكها فإذا خرجت تملكك. That the word, before it leaves your mouth, you control it. You are in control of the words before they leave your mouth. Once they leave your mouth, they control you, meaning you have no control over how what came out of your mouth is going to come back to you. You have no control. Some brothers and sisters are divorced right now, not because they wanted to be, but because they could not control the words after they came out of their mouths. You spoke, and then the recompense, the consequence of that word was that you ended up separated from somebody that you actually loved. And that's a fact. Before the words leave out of your mouth, you control them. Once they leave out of your mouth, they control you. You have no control over how it's going to come back to you. Things that you say that you can't take back. You can't take back. So Yaqub, he told Yusuf, do not relay your story. Do not relay your dream to your brothers. They're going to plot against you. Indeed, Shaitan is an enemy of man. So the lesson number 2 here is that لِكُلِّ مَقَامٍ مَقَالٍ. For every time and place, there is a speech that is appropriate for it. Everything that is known should not be said. And this is seen in 2 places here. The first is in that Yaqub, although given the gift of dream interpretation, if you notice, Yaqub never interpreted his dream for him. Yaqub never told Yusuf, oh, you know what that dream means? It means that one day you're going to be a prophet. He never translated the dream for him. Why? He just simply said to his son, the son said, Daddy, I saw in a dream 11 stars, the sun and the moon, all of them prostrating to me. And the first thing Yaqub said to him was, do not relay your dream to your brothers. Don't tell your brothers about your dream. Yaqub never told Yusuf what the dream meant, although he was given the gift of dream interpretation. So was Yusuf later on. Yusuf later on inherited that gift, as many prophets, including Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was also given the gift of dream interpretation. Why? Because dreams are one of the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala conveys revelation to the prophets. So you will find many prophets and messengers were given the gift of dream interpretation. Why? Because one of Allah's ways of conveying revelation to the prophets and messengers was through dreams. As when Aisha radiallahu anha was accused of adultery, right? That story when Aisha was accused of adultery. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finally revealed those ayats in Surah An-Nur, exonerating Aisha. Aisha said, Subhanallah, أشأني في نفسي أهون أن ينزل الله في آية تتلى إلى يوم القيامة كنت أظن أنه سيرى في المنام رؤية. Aisha said, Subhanallah, glory be to Allah. I considered myself insignificant, not worthy of Allah revealing verses about me that will be recited until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Who am I? I thought the Prophet ﷺ was going to see something in a dream that would exonerate me. Why did she say that? Because she knew that part of Prophet Muhammad's, reception of revelation was through dreams. She said, I never thought that I would be worthy of being mentioned in the Quran that would be recited until Yawm al-Qiyamah. I thought that Allah would have revealed it to him in a dream. Because one of the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala communicates revelation to the prophets and messengers is through dreams. What did Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, why did he decide to slaughter his son? What did he say? رَأَيْتُ فِي الْمَنَامِ أَنِّي أَذْبَحُكَ فَانْظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى. Ibrahim, when he was having a conversation, here again, another dialogue, the conversation between Ibrahim and Ismail had to be a very different conversation when you got to tell your child that I saw myself in a dream slaughtering you. That's a different type of conversation. You understand? This is why the prophets and messengers were men of the highest level of faith and integrity and honor. You know what I mean? Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose them, right? That's a different type of conversation that you got to tell your child. Like different conversation for us and our children is, you know, if you're in your 30s and you tell your 13-year-old and your 12-year-old, I'm pregnant again. That's a rough conversation, right? you pregnant at 35 and 36? No pun intended, baby. I'm just saying. You know what I mean? It's a different type of conversation because the child has now gotten used to being, you know, a teenager having their lives, and now another child is coming into the world. And it's like, man, like I gotta now babysit. I gotta help you raise this child, right? That's a different type of conversation, right? It's a different conversation with you and your child when you got to tell your child, listen, we got to relocate. We got to move, pack your stuff up. You know, we're moving to another state. We're moving to another city. That's a difficult conversation. But to tell your child that God showed me in a dream that I have to slaughter you, that's a different type of conversation, man. That is a different type of conversation, man. So let me give you parents a tip. The next time you want to have a difficult conversation with your child, tell that child, our conversation is not as difficult as the conversation between Ibrahim and Ismail. Can you imagine if I had to tell you that I had to slit your throat? All right, well, we don't ever have to have that conversation, but we do have to have this conversation. So I know the conversations between parents and children sometimes can be a little unnerving, can be a little uncomfortable, but you remind them that difficult conversations have been had even in the Quran between parent and child. Ibrahim alayhi salam telling his son that I got to slaughter you is a whole different type of conversation. Ibrahim alayhi salam telling his wife, I got to leave you in the valley of Mecca with a water skin and a few dates because I got to go to Palestine and give dawah. That's a difficult conversation. You understand? That is a difficult conversation. What we're talking about is not difficult. For men, I understand that you going to your wife and telling her that you are thinking about marrying another wife, taking on a second wife, that's a difficult conversation. Probably one of the most difficult conversations that a man can ever have with anybody. To go as a man to your wife and say, hey, listen, I am interested in taking on another wife. We need to sit down and have this conversation. And most men can't have that conversation. And it's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate that many sisters have to find out about that decision. And that's a unilateral decision. That's a decision that he made all by himself. And unfortunately, sometimes these moves are validated by other imams who tell brothers it's okay for you to do that. How you go back and look at your wife in her face after you went secretly married another woman, and then you come in front of and you got to come and play like everything is okay. You got to put on this face. After you just spent lying to your wife and spent a day or two with, this wife that you just married. And now you got to come back into the home and, put on your game face and lie to your wife because in your mind, she's not ready to hear it. You don't get to make that decision. You don't get to make that choice. You are choosing for her. Have the conversation, and wherever the chips fall, it is what it is. You're a man. That's what men do. We have tough conversations, and then we deal with the consequences of those conversations. But being less than a man is something that Islam would never sanction. Being less than a man is something that Islam doesn't sanction. And there's nothing less of a man than for you to go secretly marry a woman and then come back and play house with your first wife as if everything is cool, knowing damn well it's not. You understand? There's nothing manly about that. This is why the Prophet ﷺ said, 3 people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will neither look at them on the day of judgment, nor will he purify them for their sins, nor will he speak to them, and for them is a painful punishment. And one of those 4 is al-Malik al-Kadhab, is a king who lies. If you're a king, then wear the crown like a king is supposed to. Take everything that comes along with being a king. You can't be a king when you sitting that on your chair with your crown tilted, with your feet up, watching ESPN, asking your wife to bring you something to eat. That's only one side of being a king. Another side of being a king is to have that tough conversation with your woman that you love dearly and that you don't want to hurt, that you don't want to scar. That even if the marriage between you dissolves, I still want you to move on and be able to move on without me. I don't want to break you so that you can't move on. I want you, even if you make a decision to leave me, I want you to do that from a place of authority. You never had to adjust your crown, queen. You never had to be less than a queen. I never treated you any less than a queen, ever. You understand? You walk away from me. You walk away from me with your head up, with your dignity intact. You walk away with your crown still fixed on your head. Not walk away with your head hung low in humiliation because I did something that was less of a man. You understand? This grown man talk. This ain't for everybody, man. If you ain't built for that, then don't even talk about polygyny. Don't even bring the conversation up. If you're not ready to have those tough conversations, then don't bring it up. All right, sidebar. Let's go back. I kind of drifted off a little bit. Let me bring it back. No, but real talk, man. Real talk. I mean, you know, you can't be a king when it's convenient. You got to be a king all the time. You got to be a king all the time. You put that crown on your head, you know what I mean? Heavy is the head that carries the crown, man. You can't be the king when it's convenient for you. Be the king when it's tough. That's what makes you, and the woman will respect you for that. Even if she leaves you, she's going to respect you. That at least you didn't lie to her. At least you didn't do what some brothers do and go behind her back. She's going to respect you. And she gets to walk away with her dignity. She gets to walk away with her head up. How does a woman walk in a community knowing that the whole community knows that her husband married another woman and she is the only one who is oblivious? How does a woman come back from that? How does a woman bounce back from that? How does she lift her head up and walk amongst people with dignity when everybody in the community knows that her husband just married this girl over here and everybody knows but her? How in the world does she bounce back from that? There is no coming back from that. How can she sit in a crowd of sisters with her head up and, you know, her dignity intact when everybody is giggling and snickling, behind her back because everybody knows what her husband went and did? Nah, man, that ain't cool. That's not cool at all. That has no place in Islam. And any imam, any student of knowledge, anybody who instructs brothers to go and marry women because their wives are not ready to have that conversation and you can talk about it later, wallah al-azim, you need to step down from your position, period. Step down from your position because you are not a man. And part of being a leader in Islam is being a man, and you don't even qualify. You don't meet the bare minimum qualification of being a leader, and that is to be a man. Ar-rijalu qawwamuna ala nisa. Men are the protectors and maintainers of women. You understand? Allah said rijal, not abna, not boys. Men, not sibyan. Ar-rijal, men, not boys. And you don't even meet that criteria. So going back to the lesson, if you think about it, Prophet Yaqub never interpreted Yusuf's dream, although he was given the gift of dream interpretation. The question is why? Why didn't he tell Yusuf right then and there what his dream meant? And the reason why is because that was way too much information for a young boy at that particular stage in his development. That young boy was not ready to hear that you are going to be a prophet and your brothers are going to prostrate to you. Your mother is going to prostrate to you. Your father is going to prostrate to you. What young boy at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old is ready to handle something like that? Huh? Perhaps he goes and he rubs it in the face of his own brothers. Yeah, I'm going to be a prophet one day and you guys are going to make sujood to me. Exacerbating the situation. They were already jealous of him. لِكُلِّ مَقَامٍ مَقَالٍ. For every situation, there's an appropriate conversation. It wasn't the appropriate time for Yaqub to tell him what that dream meant. Yaqub knew what it meant, which is why he told him, don't tell your brothers about your dream. He knew what the dream meant, but he never interpreted the dream for Yusuf. Yusuf, you know when he found out about what the dream meant? Do you know when he found out? 40 years later. 40 years, some scholars say 80 years. That seems a bit of a stretch. 40 years later, Yusuf found out what that dream actually meant. If you fast forward, go forward a little bit, the same surah, surah number 12, ayat 99 and 100. Go turn to surah number 12, ayat 99 and 100. This was long after his whole ordeal, thrown in the well, sold into slavery, the issue at the wife of Aziz being put in prison, all of that. 40 years later, what does Yusuf say? Yusuf said in surah number 12, ayat 99 and 100, فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى يُوسُف آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَبَوَيْهِ وَقَالَ ادْخُلُوا مِصْرَ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ آمِنِينَ. That when they entered upon Yusuf, he's the king now, grown man, and his parents finally enter in his chambers. And they rush towards Yusuf to embrace him. And Yusuf says to his mother and father, Udkhulu Misr, enter into Egypt now, by the will of Allah, aminin, in safety and security. I'm the king now. There's nobody that can do nothing to y'all. وَرَفَعَ أَبَوَيْهِ عَلَىٰ عَرْشٍ وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا. And then Yusuf put his parents on thrones. He sat his parents on a throne, and his parents fell down into sujood at his feet. And what does Yusuf say? قال يا أبتي, oh my beloved father, هذا تأويل رؤياي من قبل قد جعلها ربي حقا. Yusuf says to his father, oh my beloved father, this is the interpretation of the dream that I saw before. قد جعلها ربي حقا. My Lord made it a reality. My Lord made it a reality. 40 years later, when his father could have interpreted the dream for him right then and there. But he didn't. Because not everything you know, لَيْسَ كُلُّ مَا يَعْرِفْ يُعَرَّفْ. Not everything you know, you should say. Sometimes it's best to be silent. Yaqub knew what the dream meant. He didn't tell Yusuf what it meant. Perhaps he wanted Yusuf to go through his life experiences that he had to go through. And that would give him, a deeper understanding and a deeper, appreciation for the interpretation of the dream. You understand? Not everything you know, you say. You guys got the lesson. He had to go through everything, absolutely. He had to go through all he had to go through to appreciate the details of that dream. Subhanallah. He didn't learn the interpretation of that dream until 40 years later. And of course, we know that men reach the peak of maturity at 40. All the prophets and messengers received revelation at 40. You guys follow me? Got a couple of minutes. I hope you guys are following with me. Go to ayat 12, surah 12, ayat 99 and 100. Yusuf didn't find out the interpretation of the dream until 40 years later. Meanwhile, his father was given the gift of dream interpretation and could have interpreted the dream for him right there on the spot. When he went to him and said, my father, I saw in a dream, the 11 stars, the sun and the moon prostrating to me. I saw them all prostrating to me. Yaqub could have said to him right then and there, you know what that dream means, son? It means that you're going to be a prophet and that me and your mother and your children and your brothers are all going to make sujood to you. He could have told him that right then and there, but he didn't. Subhanallah. He wanted him to appreciate. You will figure that out. You know how sometimes your child comes to you and you they seem like they so sure of themselves with something, and you could correct them and put them in their place, but you like, nah, I'm gonna just let you got it all figured out. You'll figure it out, inshallah. right? Because you want them to learn for themselves. And then they come back to you and they said, Abby, Mom, I thought that it was going to be like this, but it wasn't. And you're like, yeah, I know that. I could have told you that, but you seem like you were so sure, and I wanted you to figure that out on your own. You guys on Instagram, it's going to cut off. Yeah, unfortunately, that's cut off. So let's try that again. Okay, so he needed to go through what he needed to go through in order for him to process and understand. And so sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala withholds knowledge from us of certain things because we are simply not ready to hear it. We're not ready to hear that. As Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, in a very profound statement, he said, لا تحدثوا قوما بحديث لا تبلغه عقولهم إلا كان فتنة لبعضهم. Abdullah bin Mas'ud, in a very profound statement, he said, لا تحدثوا قوما. You never narrate something to a people or speak to people in a manner with a speech لا تبلغ عقولهم, that their intellects have not reach the ability to process and to grasp and understand, except that it's going to be a fitna for them. And this is why sometimes leaders, imams, people who, got their finger on the pulse and can kind of see a little bit, with their basira, with their insight, and they share that insight with some of you guys, and you criticize them and you condemn them for it because they are speaking to you from a place where you can't fathom what they're saying to you. And we fear what we don't understand. We fear what we don't understand. And when somebody is saying something to you that is beyond your ability to comprehend, the first thing we do is we call them crazy. Oh, this dude is off his rocker. This dude is crazy. This dude is this. This dude is that. And then years later, when you finally catch up, you're like, oh. But then you don't want to give the guy credit because then that would require you to go back and say, at the time you told us we didn't know. So you continue to call him crazy. You continue to condemn the person and continue to call him crazy. Meanwhile, the person is not crazy. The person is not crazy. The person is just a few years ahead of you. A person's basira, person's insight is just a little deeper than yours. And rather than you having, a growth mindset and are willing to accept new information, even though you really don't understand it, you're willing to listen and you're willing to learn. You have a fixed mindset, meaning if what the person is saying doesn't align with what you already believe you understand about the world, you immediately reject it. And you reject the person that's saying it. And you reject the person that's saying it. And that's the sad thing. And it's, this is the, if you want to be a leader, you want to be a teacher, that's what you're faced with. And it becomes very frustrating, which is why, when the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in the hadith that, when the people of Ta'if chased him out of Ta'if and threw rocks at him. And, the Prophet ﷺ was recalling another incident of another prophet where blood was running down his face. And he said, forgive my people because they don't understand. Forgive my people because they don't know. Malcolm X said, perhaps we will meet at a higher level of mutual understanding. Perhaps what I'm saying to you now, you don't understand. When Malcolm X said that Elijah Muhammad was a liar and was not the prophet of God, was not a messenger, many of those in the Nation of Islam at that time were not ready to hear it, and they killed him for it. And many of those who advocated the murder of Malcolm X, whether directly or indirectly, they were okay. They were happy with the murder of Malcolm X years later when they realized that, Elijah Muhammad was not the messenger of Allah. They realized that Malcolm was actually telling the truth. But he was telling the truth at a time that people were not ready to hear it. لا تحدث قوما بحديث لا تبلغه عقولهم إلا كان فتنة لبعضهم. You don't narrate to people something that is beyond their ability to comprehend, except it's going to be a fitna for them. It's going to be a trial for them because they're not ready to hear it. So perhaps Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam did not say to Yusuf, did not interpret his dream for him right then and there because he wasn't ready to hear that. It wasn't the time for him to narrate, and Yaqub let him figure that out. He didn't figure that out until 40 years later, when his parents finally came to Egypt and they prostrated to him, and he realized at that moment, it was a light bulb moment. He said, Ya abati, hada ta'wil ru'yaya min qabl, qad ja'alaha rabbi haqqa. He said, oh my father, oh my beloved father, this is the interpretation of the dream that I had before. My Lord has now made it a reality. So, I'm not going to give you any more today. We're going to stop here, inshallah ta'ala. We'll continue on Monday, inshallah ta'ala. Tomorrow we'll take a break. And on Monday, inshallah ta'ala, we will continue. I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Take the next couple of minutes to make dua before you break your fast. For those of you who this is your first fast, your second fast, you've done great. The day is over, has gone by very quickly. It's very easy. It's very easy. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.